Most people first heard the name Jeffrey Epstein through headlines filled with mystery, wealth, power, and silence. But long before the world began asking questions, his story had already been unfolding quietly behind closed doors. This is not just a story about one man. It is a story about influence, secrecy, unanswered questions, and the uncomfortable space where money and power meet justice. To understand why this case still captures global attention, we have to begin at the beginning, before the investigations, before the courtrooms, and before the world was watching. Jeffrey Epstein did not start as a public figure surrounded by controversy. In his early years, he appeared to follow a path that looked surprisingly ordinary. He worked in finance, built connections, and slowly entered circles filled with extraordinary wealth. Over time, those connections became the foundation of a life that seemed almost untouchable from the outside. Private jets, exclusive islands, famous acquaintances, and financial success created an image of authority and legitimacy. To many observers, he looked like another powerful financier moving comfortably among elites. But power often creates distance, and distance can hide truths that remain invisible for years. Rumors and concerns did not appear suddenly. They surfaced slowly, quietly, and often without consequence. In many complex cases involving wealth and influence, early warning signs are dismissed, minimized, or buried beneath reputation. What makes the Epstein story so disturbing to many people is not only the allegations themselves, but the question of how long those allegations remained in the shadows. When the first serious legal attention arrived, the world did not immediately grasp the scale of what was being described. Legal language, sealed documents, and private settlements kept much of the story fragmented. For years, information appeared in pieces rather than in a clear, complete picture. And when information is incomplete, public understanding remains uncertain. Some believed justice had already been served. Others believed the real story had not yet been told. This tension between appearance and reality became one of the defining features of the entire case. As time passed, investigative journalism began to play a crucial role. Reporters started connecting details that had once seemed unrelated. Documents were re-examined, testimonies were revisited, patterns slowly became visible. And once patterns become visible, silence becomes harder to maintain. Public attention grew, and with it came pressure. Pressure on institutions, pressure on legal systems, and pressure on individuals connected to the story. High-profile associations that once looked ordinary began to raise uncomfortable questions. How much did people know? When did they know it? And why did accountability seem delayed? These questions transformed the case from a legal matter into a global conversation about power and responsibility. When Epstein was arrested again years later, the reaction was immediate and intense. For many, it felt like a turning point. For others, it felt long overdue. Media coverage expanded rapidly, and the story reached audiences far beyond the United States. People who had never followed financial news or legal cases suddenly recognized the name. The narrative was no longer hidden in court filings. It had entered public consciousness. Yet even at this moment of global focus, uncertainty remained. Legal processes are slow, careful, and often complex. Public expectation, on the other hand, moves quickly. This difference in speed creates frustration, speculation, and sometimes misinformation. Then came the moment that shocked the world and changed the direction of the story entirely. Epstein's death in jail while awaiting trial. Official reports described it as a suicide, but the circumstances immediately triggered widespread doubt, debate, and countless questions. Security failures, missing surveillance clarity, and procedural irregularities became central topics of discussion. Whether driven by grief, anger, or mistrust, the public response was unmistakable. People wanted answers, and more importantly, they wanted transparency. When a case symbolizes larger fears about justice and inequality, every unanswered detail feels significant. After his death, the legal case against Epstein could no longer proceed in the same way, but the story did not end. In some ways, it expanded. Attention shifted toward networks, enablers, institutions, and systems that may have allowed wrongdoing to continue unnoticed or unpunished. Civil cases, document releases, and ongoing investigations kept the issue alive in courts and in media. Survivors' voices became more central, changing the tone of the conversation from speculation to lived experience. Public discourse also began examining broader themes: how wealth influences accountability, how institutions respond to allegations against powerful individuals, and how societies balance skepticism with evidence. These themes reach far beyond a single case, which is why the story continues to resonate. Even years later, new documents, testimonies, and analyses still appear, each adding another layer to an already complex narrative. Some revelations clarify details, others create new questions. This constant evolution keeps public interest alive, but it also demonstrates how difficult it can be to reach complete closure in cases involving secrecy and influence. For many observers, the Epstein case has become less about one individual and more about the structures surrounding him. It forces uncomfortable reflection. Would the outcome have been different without wealth or connections? Do legal systems treat all defendants equally in practice, not just in principle? And how can transparency be strengthened to prevent similar situations in the future? These are not simple questions, and they do not have easy answers, but asking them is part of why the story still matters. Understanding this case requires patience, critical thinking, and caution against jumping to conclusions without verified evidence. In an age of rapid information and viral headlines, careful analysis becomes more important than ever. Because beyond the mystery and controversy lies something deeper: a global conversation about justice, trust, and accountability in the modern world. And that conversation is still unfolding.